we thought we'd start off with talking about what kind of tools can help you in the commercial kitchen environment to help you plan your menu a bit better. So because there's more to it than just putting some lovely new dishes on your menu and hoping for the best. So what we wanted to do is talk about all the things that you need to consider, things like compliance considerations, managing stock and ordering, specific diets that need to be considered for some customers, and also make sure our staff are aware of the ingredients in a dish, how it's sourced potentially, the ingredients, and of course the allergens, and especially because we've got the new allergen legislation coming in later this year as part of Natasha's law. So now's the time to learn how technology can help you do this a bit better. So what I'm going to do is introduce myself and then open it up to the panel to introduce themselves, and they can talk about what their experience is. And then I'm going to open up the discussion and we'll talk about this topic in more detail. So a little bit about me. I'm Julie Klein. I'm a nutrition trained naturopathic chef, and you're probably wondering what that means. So it means I'm a specialist in plant-based and sustainable diet, so very much using natural ingredients to get the most out of them, and very much cooking with the seasons. I specialize in healthy and free from cooking, things like gluten-free, etc. And I'm founder of a company called Sustainable Kitchen Consultants, and we are a wider team of chefs like myself who are all nutrition trained and specialists in healthy cooking. And we work across the food sector, but including hospitality, to help them with services such as healthy menu planning, recipe development, training in those concepts of sustainability and plant-based and free from. We also incorporate things like food waste reduction and creative repurposing. We also help businesses bring everything together in terms of, so there's the development of the menu, but then it's bringing it together in terms of workflows to make sure that businesses are being compliant, and then also using technology as well. So I'm joined here today by 4 others actually who are going to be talking, and I'll ask them all to introduce themselves individually. So I'll start with yourself, Taron, if you want to introduce yourself.
Thank you, Judy. So hi everyone, I'm Taron Gall. I am a food and beverage consultant by background. So I've spent 16 years consulting across the world for food and beverage for the likes of Nobu, D&D London, and celebrity chefs. I am now the founder of Caffoodle. So during my travels, the one thing that came across to me was the technology in the space being lacking to make chefs' lives easier and consumer understanding better. And we founded Caffoodle 6 years ago as a technology to support kitchen management.
Great, thank you. And Charlotte?
Hi everyone, I'm sorry. Hi everyone, I'm Charlotte Newman. I'm a registered associate nutritionist. I currently work in school catering where I specialise in younger children's health. My main focus with the work I do is mainly on food education to help younger people actually develop healthy lifestyles and habits, and that's mainly by giving them the right information they need to have to make informed choices that they can take into their adult lives.
Thank you. And Ashley?
Hello guys, my name's Ashley. I'm also a nutritionally trained chef. Julie and I met while we were doing our course at the College of Naturopathic Medicine. I've further studied to work with functional medicine as a principal practice, which is lifestyle medicine as a health coach. And I also have another hat, which is digital marketing and online social media. So that's my sort of covering at the moment.
Thank you. And last but not least, the hostess with the mostess, Dominique.
Thanks, Julie. So I'm founder of Tried and Supplied, which is a platform that focuses on supply chain efficiency and sustainability. For that, we look a lot at the data management around not just sustainability, but also nutrition. So that's kind of helping to manage supply chain risk, etc. But I will talk more about that later.
Okay, thank you. All right, well, so the format for this session, I guess we're going to talk amongst, well, across the panel, and then we're going to open it up for any questions to anyone who's joining us for the last 15 minutes or so. But please do feel free to write any questions as you think of them in the comments box. And Ben, who is here on the panel as well, will flag questions that are relevant to the discussion as we talk along. Started, and so questions for you. So given, as I touched on at the start there, more and more people are recognizing that, you know, the food they eat does impact their health, but plus also the health of the planet. So given the state of, you know, globally, we've got some health issues, obviously, and climate change issues. Surely healthy meals need to be part of the immediate future plan for pubs and cafes and restaurants, etc. Would you agree?
Sorry, is it? Sorry, I wasn't sure who it was directed at. Yes, absolutely. I mean, I think what we've got to keep in mind is it's not just for the pubs and for the cafes. The main priority over the next 2 years is going to be commercials. So, you know, it's forecasted that we won't be at our revenue values until 2024. And I think actually there's a huge opportunity for pubs in the healthy dining space, where a lot of people won't be going back into the office, and a lot of people will be eating more locally and therefore in their local pubs. And as you said, the trend towards healthier eating, I think they've got a very good opportunity to compete with the high street and the likes of Pret. And as you mentioned, there are a lot of technologies that can support them in doing that, because people will no doubt eat out more locally and eat out more because we've been locked up for a while. But they also want to know that when they are eating out, that, as you say, yes, it's sustainable, but also that it is beneficial to them. And not always, but I think going to your local pub might not be seen as much of a treat as it was a couple of years ago. It might just be what you do on a Thursday afternoon because it's sunny and you're working from home.
Yeah, and I think that's a really valid point, Taron. I think, you know, there's potentially a real opportunity for places to open for, say, breakfast and lunch, you know, for people who are working from home but want to start the day, you know, or during the day, you know, have somewhere to go for lunch, rather than just be at home all the time. So why would you recommend software such as Caffoodle to help them plan their menus? What kind of things are incorporated within the Caffoodle platform that can help them?
Well, I think firstly, obviously use Caffoodle, but I think there's more to it. It's the fact of what we're seeing a lot now is, as you've just mentioned, opening for breakfast and lunch, and people wanting to go out and grab a breakfast and grab a coffee. Now, we're all aware of Natasha's Law coming out in October. And I think what is quite frustrating is a lot of the pubs aren't innovating in the space because they are very scared of what the law means to them. So they don't want to do a takeaway bacon and egg sandwich because suddenly they think, is this pre-packed? Is this, what do I have to comply with? And I think, there are elements where there are technologies that make it much easier. There doesn't have to be a huge overhead spend to get up to speed. As I'm sure Charlotte will talk about later, there's then also just the element of human error. So, you know, the allergen law has been out now for 7 years. It is still quite surprising the lack of understanding in certain establishments, what the allergen legislation actually means and how to get along with it and do it. And I think that's also increased now with the rise of pubs going onto delivery platforms. I think, once again, a lot of people don't know what their legal obligations are if you are using a third-party delivery platform to deliver your food. And software just allows you to keep it all in one place. I mean, we work with some large enterprise clients that lack transparency without a software. So yes, small companies could probably do Excel and Google, but the transparency that having a software solution brings you when it comes to your costings, your ingredients, you know, suddenly getting a delivery of cod and it's gone up by 50 pence a kilo or a pound a kilo, being able to look at that on a monthly basis and really drill down how to save costs And then also, as I'm sure Ashley will speak about later, how to market that you're doing healthy menus and be able to validate, guys, my salad is under 500 calories, so come to us instead of Pizza Express, is going to become quite important, where we're all going to be fighting for the same business moving forward. So I think getting all your ducks in a row and using it, it should be cost neutral. Anything you implement in your business this year, you should try and make cost neutral. So I think there are a lot of cost savings to be had. And you should think about the saved time, efficiencies, and the transparency and what they can bring to you as a business.
Yeah, and safety, just making sure that everyone is clear on what is in what dish, and that saves a lot of time as well. Okay, and so what part do you think food businesses should play in helping consumers make healthier choices?
This is always a tough one, because everyone always thinks I think we should dictate, and I don't. I'm a big believer in the fact that I go out for fish and chips on a Friday night, and if I'm going to go to a French restaurant, I'm going to order the filet mignon with extra fries on the side. But I think we have a duty of care to provide correct and accurate information, and whether that is allergens or nutrition, I think what we need to be able to do is give the consumers the information for them to make informed decisions, whether that is a salad on a Monday or a burger. It's more about them looking at their eating patterns as a whole. So if I know that I'm going to the pub and I'm having a burger and it contains 2,500 calories, then maybe I will make myself a salad at home for dinner. But actually, I think there are a lot of hidden health problems in a lot of food, where, as Charlotte was saying about educating people, where a lot of people will naturally assume a salad is much healthier, and that's not always the case. And I think especially with the rise of health, it's, you want to know sugar content, and there's certain things consumers want to just be able to know quite easily.
Yeah, and I guess there's a balance to be struck, isn't there? Because so there has been industry-wide talk about calories being, placed on menus, and sugar content and salt content and fat content, which, I think would be a bit of a shame actually if it went too rigid down that route. But equally, there's also, some restaurants or cafes want to talk about the health benefits of a particular dish, whether it's good for gut health, for example, if it contains fermented foods. And I get there are some things that restaurants need to be careful of in that respect, and they aren't the same direct health claim legislations that apply to food service as they do to, say, a product, where there are really strict regulations. But there's nothing wrong with a restaurant saying something has got I don't know, if it's got carrots in it, to say contains vitamin A or whatever. That's just one example, because then you're not making a health claim, you're just actually talking about what is contained within that dish. So, but I guess my general point is restaurants need to be careful what they're saying, and not to put off guests, but equally not to get into a situation where they're making claims that they shouldn't be as well. So it's a bit of a tricky one to navigate, and I think it's going to evolve in terms of legislation and guidelines around that. But it's interesting. So do you think healthier options can increase sales and drive footfall? I mean, you were saying there that, yeah, you agree that the breakfast and lunch trade could be something that restaurants should look for. Do you think that could help drive additional footfall if there's healthier options there?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. Just speaking as a general consumer, I don't know. I mean, everyone else on this call, I'm sure it's very frustrating when you go into a pub in the middle of June and it's 25 degrees in London and the only options are deep fried. It just is, even not as someone who's incredibly strict, but going into a pub on a Wednesday, I probably do want a healthy option. And I think driving your sales Monday to Tuesday, and I think the pubs really have to start thinking about the fact that people aren't going into Pret and Coca de Mama and Starbucks at lunchtime. Correct. Because they're not going to be in the offices. And then, I mean, Pret did the case study. The main reason people went into Pret is they had calorie labeling. People could easily see that the whole wheat sandwich had 300 calories compared to the sushi that had 400 calories. So I think it goes without saying, with the use of social media and just with advertising lunch offerings, and that's breakfast, lunch, and dinner offerings that are not And I'm not saying put calories on your entire menu. I'm saying let your chef come up with 4 really tasty, healthy options that someone sneaking out for lunch break doesn't feel guilty about having a chicken salad. But I think it's definitely a huge opportunity, I think, and I can't see how it wouldn't increase your footfall and your sales moving forward.
Okay, thank you. Now, Dominique, I understand you've done some work with Taron and team at Caffoodle and the Sustainable Restaurant Association on understanding what they would like to see on menus from a sustainability and nutrition perspective, and insight into what you've been doing.
Yes, so really exciting actually to work with Caffoodle and Sustainable Restaurant Association. We took the approach of trying to make sure that everything from the supply chain was getting through to, we wanted to get it through to menus so that restaurants could really benefit from all of the good decisions they're making in terms of supply chain by sharing that with their diners on the menus. And you know, one of the things that I really like about the way that Caffoodle works is that if you've got an allergy, for example, you can filter but the menu to just show you what you actually can eat. And so from a consumer perspective, it's a really slick experience. And we were working with the Sustainable Restaurant Association to understand what they would like to see in terms of sustainability on menus. And that's something that the next stage for us is to discuss with Caffoodle how we get that information into their platform as well, so that it can actually not just be filtering by nutrition, but also by sustainability as well, so that, you know, a lot of the time it's really hard for consumers to make a sustainable choice, no matter how much they might want to make one. But that's partly because the information isn't there. And I mean, it's something I've seen in a lot of the conversations so far as well, is also how important measurement is for implementing sustainable change and decision making, and just really understanding, you know, whether we're doing the right things. And I think what we're trying to do is really kind of reverse engineer where we want to get to on menus back through the supply chain to get that information direct from suppliers in a way that's easy for them to upload and update, because that's the other challenge. You know, there's so much data, and not just from a nutritional perspective, but also from a sustainability perspective, and it's so important to get it right. But suppliers end up filling out forms all over the place just to, you know, comply with various policies for sourcing. And through the platform that we've now built in connection with what we learned from the SRA and Caffoodle, they can fill that out once in one place, and then that information is available for all of the customers that they work with, and it's easy for them to update across all of those customers as well. So it kind of it keeps it in a single space, and from a supply chain risk perspective, it also means that you have access to that data at all times as a restaurant, and you can easily see and then apply that to your menus. So that's really the work that we've been doing.
And so just so I understand that, so that's only if a restaurant is using Caffoodle and Tried and Supplied for their suppliers. Is that right? Or anyone?
So the data can come out if for anyone if you're not using Caffoodle, but obviously you get the kind of slickest experience if you're from a consumer perspective, if you are then able to actually use it as a filter on the menu. Not everyone wants to have a digital menu, and obviously that plays partly into kind of what the kind of environment is for your restaurant, and we can provide the data from the suppliers. It's in the purchasing environment, so you've still got access to that. And it works very well from a procurement perspective as well, because we have a search for suppliers, which applies that data to the search as filters. So if you're looking for an organic supplier, for example, you can use that as a filter. Yes, the concept of working with Caffoodle is to provide that kind of slickest experience all the way through to the consumer menu, with the kind of easiest for you as well, because it will just kind of naturally appear on the menu without you having to do very much at all.
That's really exciting. So it's live now, or is it still in kind of test mode?
No, the platform, the Try and Supply platform is ready now. The only bit that we're just got to work through still is the connection between Caffoodle and ourselves, and that shouldn't be, I don't think. Looking at Taron, I don't think it should be very complicated, because we've already aligned on what our field structures are.
Very cool, very cool. Thank you. Now, Charlotte, I'm really pleased that you've been able to join us. As you introduced yourself at the start of the session, you're a registered dietitian. So it was great to have you join this session so that you can talk us through like a real life case study of how you apply healthy menu planning techniques to what you do. So could you talk us through what you're doing with Havering Education Services?
Of course. So we use Caffoodle to quite a big extent. We pretty much rely on it from all aspects to make sure that we get the information over properly. So it's mainly to, as I said, to provide the information we need to get across to our young students. And because we all know they are the future generation that will be going to pubs and will be shaping hospitality with their behaviours and habits later on, it's really important as caterers that we actually shape those habits from a young age. So we use Caffoodle quite a lot with filters, like Dominique said, from allergens to even nutrients, or even like you can apply menu tags that are suitable for halal and other culture and diet requirements. And that's really important for us because we want transparency throughout the whole menu. It's really accurate and efficient to use. It houses all the information that we need, but also it's live. So like Taron said earlier, it gets rid of human error. So as a nutritionist, when I'm trying to analyze the menus, it makes my life so much easier, because you're always like, what if I've read that wrong? What if I've done this wrong? And it's going to impact somebody that uses this information on a daily basis. And that's really scary as anybody in the hospitality industry. So by having the software, it does take a lot of that pressure off of you to know the information you are getting from your suppliers is live and accurate, and it's updated regularly. And that's really important for Natasha's Law when it comes in October, because already the allergens are there for you. And if there is a change from the manufacturer to the supplier, that's already pulled through to Caffoodle, and that day is already updated on your menus for that end user to use. We use a lot of the menu functionalities, but mainly labels. So we currently use the traffic light label, and we're trying to use this as a caterer to bridge the gap between what's seen in a local supermarket when they're purchasing food to what they actually see on their menus. And we've actually seen that students have started to gravitate towards main meal options. So, for example, you can imagine when you're in secondary school, you're like a kid in a candy store. You see the curly fries, you see the pizza, and you're like, wow, what can I get today? But as soon as they put the traffic light labels on our menus, they're like, oh, I actually want lasagna today because I had curly fries last week and I really need to get that balance back in my life. And loads of students have commented on it. They want more healthy options on the menus.
Brilliant.
On surveys, they've said, oh, I want more sustainable options. I want to know where my food's coming from. Is it locally sourced? Is it seasonal? So we've done a massive education piece by using the information we have in Caffoodle to make sure that our products are sustainable and they're locally sourced. And as a nutritionist, that makes sure that our food is high in nutrients, it's not lost during importation from abroad, and it is supporting our local areas. We've also like used the menu planning solution. So I work with a lot of colleagues on making menus, and such as chefs, as we all know, can be a little bit stubborn in their ways when it comes to, but that makes it so much flavoursome. And you're like, well, yes, it does, but there's other ways of getting that flavour into the dish.
Yeah.
And by using like the functionalities, it highlights the problem areas by looking at key nutrients. So you can say, oh, that's really high in salt. Is there another way I can reduce that? But also make sure it's flavoursome that day, so the kids are still going to want to eat that food.
Yeah. Great. And so what age are the students actually, Charlotte?
So we go from 5 all the way up to 18. So we've got quite a broad spectrum.
Yeah. Okay.
But we don't use the traffic light labels with
collect
primary.
feedback from them.
So we have we've started like a
Right,
push
okay.
button system. So for example, we'll ask random questions during the week, and it will change per school, and they'll literally have like a green saying yes, no, or maybe, and then they have an option to then feed back actual direct information to us. We also have started doing paper surveys, but obviously with technology and sustainability, we really don't want to be using paper anymore. So we're trying to find ways of adapting to get the information back from the students.
Okay, very good. And so just so I understand, Charlotte, so those who are perhaps serving, like say front of house, are they also using the technology to be able to answer any questions that the kids have or the students have over and above what's on the traffic light information?
Yeah, so they have access to all the recipes, and the recipes are particularly important for Caffoodle, and this is why we moved over to Caffoodle, was because it highlights all the allergens specifically on each ingredient when actually pulling off the recipe. So usually when you're looking at the recipe, it doesn't highlight like the flour you use has gluten in it. So when they're actually trying to adapt recipes for those that have special dietary needs, they can see, okay, well, in that dish, that flour is actually affecting that person. So if I did a swap by using gluten-free flour, the rest of the dish will be okay. So they have access to that, but they also have access to the menu planning solution, especially in secondary schools, because they're all individual, whereas primary has like, I think we look after 50 primary schools. They have one menu across the whole board, whereas the individual secondary schools we have, everyone's different, so they can tailor their own menus.
And what's the hardest thing, Charlotte? What's the hardest thing in planning menus? I mean, you mentioned there that chefs can be a little challenging to get on board, but is there anything else that is slightly challenging?
What's always highlighted is salt and sugar in our diet, and it's been shown so many times that in the UK we're nearly consuming double the amount of sugar we should be having, and nearly a third more, a quarter more salt than we should. So from a young age, we're trying to tailor their taste buds into not having as much sugar. So if we have a sponge, for example, we're trying to incorporate more hidden veg into the sponge that's got more natural sugars, but less natural sugars than what a fruit might have. So for example, one of our favorite sponges is a chocolate and beetroot cake. The kids love it, but it hasn't got as much sugar, so they don't have the taste for the high sugar consumed foods that they normally would. So that's the biggest problem at the moment, I think, is trying to tailor our recipes to their needs.
And what about allergens, like and cross-contamination information? Is that a challenge, or because I know that Caffoodle does have labels saying things like it may contain, for example.
So it is.
Sorry.
That's really, it's really important. I think it's mainly the suppliers providing us with the correct information in the first place. We get a lot of may contains, and obviously we know it's a case of it might be in the factory, it might not be, we're not 100% sure. So with Natasha's law, hopefully that's going to be ironed out a little bit more to allow consumers to have more options on the menu. But also with cross-contamination, especially in like school kitchens, our kitchens are tiny and compared to like commercial kitchens. So having to have space and have designated areas for certain allergens can be quite hard to do, but the kitchens do amazingly well with the actual facilities that they have.
Great. Okay, well, thank you. Now,
Thank you.
Ashley, so obviously, you know, the point of modifying a menu to cater better for health conscious consumers is to attract them to your business and increase sales. So there's more to it than just adding some new menu items. So how can hospitality businesses leverage technology in the form of social media marketing to attract health conscious consumers? So what would you say your top 3 or 4 suggestions would be?
I would say it's really important for them to understand their current audience. So one of the things that tends to happen when we start to look at modifying menus in any establishment is that there's hesitancy about alienating the locals or the people who do currently come in there. And so getting them on side and building a story early on about what the intentions are and how you're bringing that into your offering is really important with the audience that already exists. But then there's a little bit of extra work that can be done with some diligence in terms of looking for the audience that you'd like to pull into your outlet or your menu. And that can be both by a geographic term if you're a physical location. So reasonably, how far do you think someone would travel to come and have a 3-course meal with you? Or is it just the local bypassers moving past your coffee shop? And what are their interests going to be? What are the things that they're going to be looking for in terms of the types of spaces online that they may be looking at, so that your business is associated with those things? So if we're talking about healthy diets and healthy foods, we might want to understand within an hour from our location what the vegan group, where the vegan groups are, and maybe start saying, hey, these are our offerings, because those people have got sort of specific requirements that you can talk to. You may look at some of the community support groups for health conditions and sort of cancer support groups and things like that, so that you start to put your offering from your premises into the spaces where people are likely to be thinking about what they're consuming, so that your message resonates. You also want to make sure that you've got something which we call a CTA, so a call to action. So instead of just posting a pretty picture about the new menu that's coming out or the new dish of the day, there's a lot of functionality within Facebook and Instagram, which obviously talk to each other because they're owned by the same company, to get interactive poll questions, slider graphs, yes, no imagery, and really finding that the engagement piece that comes from the user having to touch something or type on something rather than just clicking what we're used to seeing, which are thumbs and hearts, is helping the algorithms in the background to add your content into the usable space for those interests and criteria. It's a good idea also to be aware of your competitors. So what do you do well as a business, and leverage from that point as well. So people come here because they love to get a really good Sunday lunch. We're going to improve the quality of our roasts and have better labeling and better visibility. Then making sure that if that's the same thing that the other 3 pubs in the area are talking about, do you need to differentiate so that your USP gives you some point of difference, so that your messaging is going to stand out, because everyone and everything is online at the moment. So it's quite a tricky place to navigate.
And just a question. So, you know, Charlotte rightly pointed out that, you know, younger people, it's great to try and appeal to younger people around healthy and more sustainable menu options. And it's great that they're actively asking for them. And I keep seeing a plethora of new things like funky Instagram filters for food, etc. And I know, you know, some big brands like Papa John's and Domino's, etc. have got these Instagram filters. Now they're fairly basic at the moment, but it seems to me like this kind of space in the digital world, in social media marketing, is going to just increase even more in food, which I think is really exciting. But I guess it's early days yet. Have you come across anything that you think is kind of a sign of where the trends are going with social.
Yeah, well, I'll use my own Instagram account as an example. So, and I'm sure you guys are seeing this as we've grown up with the social media space. So none of us are under 18, I'm assuming. They're going to be used to that. They're going to be used to, especially Charlotte, your audience, that you're then sort of saying, you know, if we can shape a generation to come into the eateries that are on offer. They're doing a really good job in terms of advertising intentionally within your interest category, and then tying stories to either seasonal occasions. So by that I mean Halloween or Spring Day, or it's Earth Day this week, to align to that conscientious feel, so that it looks like the business cares about the same thing that you care about. And that really starts to resonate through. So the magic touch point with businesses that seem to gain leverage through the social space is that they're not always saying, come and buy something from us, or come and look at us, that they're also sharing in community. Hey, look at them, because they're really great too. And I think that that's a really useful thing for businesses to take on board when they're trying to talk to the audiences they already have, but also if they want to be a little bit strategic and try and do some intentional marketing to grow new audiences, is who are these people and what do they like? Let's also talk about and share the content from the spaces that these people may already be viewing. And with the younger generation, you know, who's to say you don't start looking at musicians and some of the online publications, things like Twitch, which is a gaming platform, you know, any of those technology pieces that are coming through in that generation. And Charlotte, you've got a great opportunity there, where not only have you got a traffic light system on your feedback form, but if you did manage to set up some sort of Instagram feed, it was like Havering cares about your food, and say, hey kids, you know, we want to make sure that we're getting your feedback. What do you want to see? And get them to sign up to it, and maybe do some sort of giveaway or something like that that doesn't need to cost too much money, but it gives them a platform where they feel like they're part of community. Online can be really alienating. So I think when we show connection and community, it really seems to leverage brand messaging.
And are there any particular hashtags that you found work in the health and sustainability space? I mean, I know we at Sustainable Kitchen use Healthy People, Healthy Planet a lot, because that very much aligns to our ethos, and that seems to be growing as a trending hashtag. But are there any that you think are ones that people might want to use in their own advertising?
I think one of the things that's important about hashtags is to understand the difference between something that's got weight behind it and something that's connected to someone's personal brand. So when you're building a story online, as soon as you start typing the hashtag and it auto-fills for you, something that says 61,000 posts is something that you're tagging onto, and something that says by Julie Klein is actually someone's personal tag. And so just be mindful that you won't get any audience traction or any sort of like algorithm boosters if you're accidentally tagging to something that is associated with just one brand or business. Much like an old school publication conversation, you would say, what's your audience reach? And a tag can give you that indicator for audience reach. I think it's quite early days, Julie, to know that there's some that are really resonating. But as we continue to work on some of the projects that you and I are working on, I'm sure that we're going to find some of them that are definitely growing in size. You could always do something really, really clever and tag in Seaspiracy, because you know it's big on Netflix, and make sure that your message has got something to do with the sustainability piece and advocating, because you know there's eyes on those pieces, and they kind of sit within the context of
and that's what I was going to suggest. Whatever is you know, kind of topical at the time. So obviously, you know, immune health is very topical right now, and gut health and how it contributes to immune health. So I know certainly I've been using those tags, and they've resonated quite well. That's really interesting. Thank you. So we've got 15 minutes or so left. So I was going to open it up to any questions, but also open it up to the panel if you wanted to ask each other questions or just comment on the conversations that we've had so far. So I don't know where Ben's gone, whether Ben, you've spotted any questions that have come through already?
We've got a couple of questions on the side.
Mm-hmm.
Where is it? Where are we going? I think it's one from Taron, which is just kind of like for anyone. I think that's like an open discussion, open debate type of question. What's that?
About what?
It's about what are main points thinking about creating healthy options.
Yeah, sorry, Ben. That was just a conversations piece.
Okay.
Just I suppose, yeah. I think Sarah has asked a question around Natasha's law. I don't know if Sarah's still with us. I think she is.
Sarah's still here.
Which I don't know if you want to answer that first before we kind of have the general conversation.
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
I mean, Sarah, I gather there was direct Caffoodle's been spoken
Sarah,
about.
Sorry, it seems your question is, what's the recommended small business plugin option for producing labels? Well, Taron, I'm going to leave that one for you because I know you guys have got a dedicated Natasha's Law labeling function, right?
Yeah, so sorry, Sarah, I wasn't sure if you were asking specifically about our software, but you're able to print labels straight from recipes, and when you say plugin, it depends. We have an API with a number of printers, 5 to be precise, but we can also just download as a PDF or PNG, and you can just send it to a printer, or you can literally just print from like one of your home printers. So we can send the data pretty much anywhere. It just depends on whether you want it designed up or have a designer, etc. Does that answer your question? Sorry, I see you're quite active on the chat.
It does, thanks, she says, yes.
Brilliant, thank you.
Great. And actually, Taron, I've got a question for you because I'm currently here at a place called The Fold, where we have a cafe that we opened last week, which was very exciting for the first time in a year. And we also have a farm shop and various other things on site. And Taron, you and I have been talking about how Caffoodle can actually be something that can help businesses that do have this like kind of dual part to their business, and farm shops have been, one of the big success stories during lockdown, in that it became a place where people preferred to do their shopping rather than go to the big, 4 multiples. So there's been a huge rise in sales. And could you just talk me through what you were saying, that how Caffoodle can really help increase footfall and sales, I guess, between your interactive menus, between a retail component to a business as well as with a food service component?
Sure. I suppose it's what I touched on earlier about the pubs that we've seen innovating, which Julie's obviously got a specific venue that does, but we've seen a lot of pubs become the local. So a lot of the Green King pubs were selling eggs, bread, beer, oil essentials during lockdown. So I think for me, with the interactive menus and with Natasha's Law in mind, it's the case of if someone goes to someone like Julie's venue and has a coffee, they can then scan a QR code and easily browse all of the products that are available within the farm shop, and then either order and pay for it or go in and select what they want. I think when it comes to kind of thinking outside the box, I think one of the things I was chatting to Julie about is, I don't know how everyone else feels, but every time I go into a venue, sanitizing and browsing and walking around farm stalls aimlessly is not necessarily encouraged, and you kind of feel a bit awkward where you want to know what's there, what the prices are, and then maybe go in and buy it. And it's kind of more of a Natasha's Law thing where I don't think people are going to be encouraged to touch products, to read the labels. I think they need to be given a comfortable digital alternative that they can read in their own time.
Okay, yeah. And it's great that your software can be used for those dual purposes. So is there any other questions from people who have joined?
I was just going to bring up the topic of QR codes, which is something that I think certainly we've designed with that in mind, that every supplier has a public profile that can be essentially represented on a QR code. So it's really easy to actually show the traceability of the menu via QR codes as well. And I think, you know, people are so much more familiar with QR codes this year that I definitely see them coming a lot more to the fore, and they're a great way of kind of hosting a lot of information you don't really want to clutter up your menu with, but it's there and it's accessible for the people that want to access it.
Yeah, and what's really great about this conversation that we've had here is because I don't think it's necessarily front of mind with people when we're talking about a healthy menu, because, you know, we are talking about supply chain transparency here as well, right? So and that's important for a number of reasons. One, you know, people might want to know from a allergen point of view whether something's, you know, there's a risk of cross-contamination. So for example, if something is produced in a factory where there might be other allergens, so there's that, you know, may contain, but also there's, you know, if people are looking for things like organic, also just wanting to know, yeah, you know, where it's been sourced from and how many touch points there are, and that's really important to people looking for something that's good for their health. But also there's, you know, people who are also concerned from a locality point of view, where it's grown, how far away it's been sourced from them from a Healthy Planet point of view. And what I'm really encouraged about is that people even more and more are now seeing that you know, human health and planetary health are just so interlinked, and they are not separate, and we have to think about them together. So this healthy people, healthy planet, and it's fantastic that you know, this conversation is, you know, it's organically just kind of followed that route across, you know, the whole supply chain. It's not just about putting something gluten-free on the menu anymore. It's about really thinking through where your ingredients are coming from and what it's doing for people and planet. So I think it's very, very exciting that everyone's getting it.
We also had a cafe last year that was we worked with on digital receipts for information like that as well, which was quite interesting. It's obviously kind of after they've already made the choice, so it's not influencing their choice, but it was a nice way of showing the traceability of the supply chain as well.
Very good.
I had one question in the chat, which was about freshness and nutrition, and this is probably for Charlotte. Kind of whether you see that as a link.
Yeah, there is like a slight link in terms of if it's the food that's been picked and frozen, there's no like depletion in nutrition whatsoever. But it's kind of a case of if you picked a pepper from a farm and then you wanted it in a school, by the time it gets to the farm to the supplier, depending where the farm is, if it's in Spain, it would take a lot more distance to get to us. So the amount of exposure to light and oxygen has a massive impact on the nutrient content in that pepper. So then it will deplete. Like I think on average, it can deplete by 20% if it's exposed at room temperature for a long period of time. So that's why we try and look in school catering at a more local produce. So I think our local grocer is literally like 10 miles away from us. So it's not great in comparison to like the farm next door, but it tries and reduces the amount of air miles and everything else. I hope that helps.
Yeah, no, that was perfect. I was wondering how much. I mean, 20% is quite interesting. Yeah, that consider how much of a global supply chain it is.
Yeah, we do actually have a session that I'm running tomorrow, which is all around the future of growing for nutrition. Actually, if people want to join that from 9 till 10. And so that was a nice little segue there, Dominic, into plugging that session. So there's some really exciting things like using Brita readers and bionutrient readers to actually compare the nutrient density of fresh produce. So that's really exciting. And then talking about, you know, potentially those readers being available either at point of sale in supermarkets, or at least for chefs, you know, being able to choose the quality of their produce as well. So yeah, there's a lot going on in this space, which is really cool. Any more questions? We've got 7 minutes left. No? Ben, anything?
I was just thinking, because I mean, it's such a good idea. There's a phrase, isn't there? The field to the fork.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like, I think it's harder for businesses because a lot of it is dependent on the area, because you can't, you know, like in London, it's kind of difficult, isn't it, to find an area where you can go and just kind of like grow, you know, a whole load, you know, an annual supply of fruit and veg. So it is kind of, you know, the carbon footprint is the thing. And I mean, well, if you look at the Brits kind of do this thing, don't they? They grow their own herbs in the kitchen.
Yeah, that's becoming more common, isn't it? Rooftop gardens and that kind of thing, which is good. And
I think it definitely, I think you know, it definitely adds and contributes to the actual, you know, the final feeling that the customer is going to have. You know, the whole, if you are getting like sustainable foods put onto your plate and served to you, I think you are going to end up with getting a more rewarding value for your money that you're spending. And I think it is definitely going to take some time for it to catch on, you know, nationally. Like, I think it's happening in small stages at the moment, but it's definitely.
I think it has to be quicker though, doesn't it? Because of the planetary and environmental challenges. So, but I guess one important thing is that, you know, so for us to be growing sustainably, well, when I say us, I mean, you know,
obviously,
farmers, etc. You know, there is a process to go through to, you know, to protect the soil, and so therefore there needs to be rotation of crops. So it's not necessarily, you know, that you grow a certain number of, you know, produce every year, and every year there is, you know, rotation. So it's our responsibility really to, you know, as industry players, to educate the customer in that way, not only in seasonal but also around farming. And again, so in this session tomorrow morning, that's what we're going to be talking about.
Well, I think businesses, I think like if you're at the big supermarket chains, I think they need to develop their numbers a little bit better. Is the thing. I think they need to establish a system where they can cut their waste down by sort of looking at their figures of sales and go, right, okay, so, you know, we've sold this much this year, we've sold that much this year, obviously we're left with this much waste. So maybe they need to start pulling in their reins a little bit.
I think they need to start helping us educate the consumer a bit better about what's actually seasonal and local as well, don't we? But anyway, we'll pick with
that's a different topic.
Yeah, we'll invite them next time, won't we?
Have to get them involved, definitely. But it's been very enlightening. I've enjoyed very much listening to your and the perspectives that are coming out. You know, I think I think Caffoodle's quite a good idea, obviously. I mean, I don't know much about it. I work for Green King at the moment, and they use Caffoodle. So I've got it on the phone, but I'm still mastering it. still trying to home in on it.
Okay. Well, we've got 3 minutes left. I think we're done. But thanks very much, everyone. And so there's a whole big program. Check out what's on at trideandsupplied.com. You can buy tickets from there, I think, Dominique. So if there's some other sessions that you want to join, then please do. I've got one coming up in an hour's time where I'm going to be talking with Vince Kelly from Westminster Kingsway College, and we're going to be talking about fermentation and how to do that in a commercial kitchen. I'm going to show a little bit of a demo, and Vince is going to do a bit of a cooking demo as well, so that one's going to be a bit interactive. And then I've got 2 more tomorrow, as I said, the one talking about the nutrient density of produce and the future of growing, and then in the afternoon I've got another session with a couple of restaurants who are really making inroads into their healthy and sustainable menu planning. And I'll be talking about what we're doing here at the Fold, Ashley and I, about creating a really healthy, sustainable farm to fork catering experience here as well. So that's an unmissable one tomorrow.